thanks everyone. It is a real honor and a privilege to talk to you today. There's a quote here by John Muir. When you pick out anything, you find that it's hitched to everything else in the universe. And it's not a quote by Odum, but I think it's really fundamental to both his research career and what our school has built on, which is the connections. And the connections that I wanted to talk about and reflect on are the ones that the Odum School has built through its educational programs and through its collaborations here at UGA. From long-standing programs like UGA Costa Rica to newer initiatives like Watershed UGA, which is where we're taking ecological concepts and spreading them through courses and service learning projects all over campus. And in terms of the collaborations that we're strengthening and building on in the Odum School, the Environmental Ethics Certificate we've always been a part of, and now there are newer collaborations like Arts and Environments collaborations with the Ideas for Creative Exploration unit over in the art school, where our students and art students are working together to find creative ways to solve environmental problems. Most fundamental probably is our research and graduate education in conservation. Here the connections are strong and building every day. The master's program in CESD is still a stronghold, and now we have the new ICON Integrative Conservation PhD program, which is getting our students to extend beyond ecological training into social sciences and humanities to make stronger connections between ecology and society in their own scholarship and as they go out as professionals. And it's in this capacity that I'm going to stretch things and talk about my own work, which also reaches beyond ecological research into social science research. I'm trained as a restoration and rangeland ecologist, and when I look at a degraded landscape, I think about how to get grass to grow. But after working in Kenya for 20 years, the reason that those lands are degraded and the capacity to restore them is just as much a social process as an ecological one. And I've been studying pastoralism as a social ecological system for several years now. So pastoralist social ecological systems is a livelihood system based on livestock that is very common in dry lands around the world. One of the challenges, though, is as these livelihoods have adapted, they're highly resilient to the low and variable rainfall in the landscape. But social changes have occurred all over Africa that have changed both the political and the social context for practicing this. People have lost land rights. They've been marginalized politically. And that has feedbacks onto the ecosystem, more pressure on land. So how do you address conservation in a complex coupled human environment system? How do you address complex landscapes? Well, my approach is to embrace that complexity and start with localized mechanisms and the interactions and build up to try and understand the emergent phenomena and behaviors, and then look to both of those to see where are the leverage points where you might be able to develop strategies for managing them. And I'm going to talk about two examples, one ecological and one social, touching on the social science research that I also do. Okay, so the big question is, well, how does rainfall and grazing interact to affect the herbaceous layer that this whole livelihood system depends on? Well, we understand a lot of what goes on at a local scale, so we developed a hill slope scale cellular automata model where we know patches of grass and bare through about 8 years of empirical research parameterizing this, how they tend to transition based on grazing pressure and rainfall over time. And when you scale that up to a hill slope scale model where patches interact through space, you can see that we get some temporal switches in grassiness and bareness through time triggered by droughts, but under all grazing scenarios we're recoverable. So from this, what we've learned from this modeling, which I've built with my buddy Trenton Franz at the University of Nebraska, who's a hydrologist, is that the drought responses in the vegetation are persistent, but not permanent. That's important to know as a restoration ecologist. And through doing sensitivity analyses, manipulating the flow paths, the big areas of bare soil that we get overland flow, is the most sensitive target for manipulating the system. So that's an example of this arch in an ecological system. How do we study this in a social system? Well, what I've been working on with my postdoc, Gabriele Volpato, who's an anthropologist, is looking at the livelihood adaptation of adopting camels. This landscape is now much more suited for camels than cattle because there's no grass, and it's really dry. So, but how do we understand that adoption process? That's really essential to understanding its role in sustainability. Well, we use a sustainable livelihoods lens as a social science theory and a technique called cognitive mapping that identifies the causal relationships between everything someone says as they recount their 30-year history. You stack those up to get a social cognitive map, which gives you an idea of how different groups in society have had different levels of social and environmental assets that have affected their decision-making and the outcomes. And you can plot the trajectories through time of different groups in the society of how their resilience has changed. And by doing this, we've been able to look at what is the future of camels, barriers and opportunities. One key barrier is that cattle play a lot of important social roles that the camels have not stepped into. So in terms of maintaining the social fabric of this system, the camels aren't working. And also we're seeing greater wealth inequality with camel owners doing much better than cattle owners, which is also tearing at the social fabric of these very tight-knit communities. And the thing that we don't understand is, like, if everyone had camels, how would that affect the overall ecosystem? We haven't really done that work yet, because to do that, you need a model that's going to have all of your dynamics on the social side here, modeled dynamically, and the ecological side. And this is what we're working on now. This side of the model has a lot of Bayesian belief networks built out of the kinds of survey work we're doing, feeding into an agent-based model, which we're building now. And then the ecological side uses ecosystem service, systems dynamics models, and a landscape model called APEX to try and understand how land use effects and decisions in this central area where people are changing their livelihood strategies are actually likely to play out. And this way, we're hoping that we're building on the strengths of the School of Ecology for really understanding how humans and ecosystems are connected to look to a more sustainable future. And that really is the beauty of being here. It's very exciting to be here and to be a part both of ecology and these programs across campus to think about how ecology and society links, to build on the strengths of all the other faculty who are doing conservation ecology research, linking those things, making those connections. And the beauty and what I've come to appreciate so much about being here is all of this building, all the programs and all the research is all driven by everyone caring. We're all here because we really care about the Odum School. And that's been the strength for 50 years, and I think is really what will impel us to reach great heights in the future. And that is certainly something to celebrate. Thank you.